Luke to the... Welcome back to the void.
Is that what you call your upstairs bedroom?
Yeah.
Alright, it's nice. Very homey.
So, we're back in the void. We haven't recorded an episode of the Moving Picture Show in like a year.
At least a year, yeah.
At least a year. Yeah. And I just uploaded the Dracula one, but today we're going to talk about... Are we talking about a perfect movie trilogy?
I was actually gonna ask, which one do you like more? Are you more Lord of the Rings, or are you more the Frankenstein trilogy?
I mean, I have nostalgia with both. I have more nostalgia with Frankenstein, but only the first movie. No, the first and second movie. I have nostalgia with Lord of the Rings, but like, in terms of sheer like... So like, with the Lord of the Rings trilogy, like they made it at a time when like it was easier to make a trilogy, like a perfect trilogy.
Yeah, I mean the groundwork was already laid by other trilogies.
Yeah, and Universal like didn't have the kind of technology, the kind of writing staff. You also have to like remind people, because back in the day, like if you missed a movie in the theater, you missed it, and so with each movie they have to remind the audience what happened.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I think I'm spoiling my opinion on this before we even get into the movies, but I just love these first three Frankenstein movies. I love them. Yep. I think I genuinely, and I'm not trying to be funny, like I genuinely think this is a perfect trilogy.
And then you love Ghost of Frankenstein even more?
Ghost of Frankenstein does not exist. So we'll talk about this later on, but like I think Ghost of Frankenstein might be the worst Frankenstein movie, possibly the worst ever made. And I think it's funny
what
how...
about I, Frankenstein?
Oh, I forgot about that one.
I've never actually seen it.
That one's really bad. I've only seen scenes, but it was so bad. But like, other reviewers like Cinemassacre and stuff, who I like a lot, only because I think they're sexy, but they always like give Ghost of Frankenstein way more of a pass than I would, and I feel like it's just the nostalgia glasses, and it's just, you gotta give it props because it's old, basically, and I'm just like, no, Ghost of Frankenstein just sucks.
Yeah, I never finished it, so...
I fell asleep almost all the way through. I fell asleep near the last scene, but Lon Chaney was super miscast. But we'll get into some aspects of Ghost of Frankenstein, but we're not going to talk about that this time, because you want to record another episode where we talk about Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, mm-hmm. and I think that would be a good time to bring up Ghost of Frankenstein as well,
mm-hmm.
because that's where the series kind of leaves the realm of reality.
You see that? We're already advertising future episodes.
Yeah, that we'll record in a year.
Not 5 minutes
again. We will return to the void in a year.
That's right.
Anyway, you just finished watching the last movie. You've seen the first two. How many times?
I mean, I've seen them all a couple times, but Son of Frankenstein...
Have you seen Son of Frankenstein?
I have seen it, yeah.
Oh,
I hadn't seen it in a long time, though. But yeah, I mean, I watch Bride... Or I either watch Frankenstein or Bride at least once every year.
I was going to say, I have to watch those at least once a year.
Yeah, and then Son of Frankenstein I probably watched like 5 to 10 years ago.
You want to hear something funny? Son of Frankenstein I probably watched twice a year. I'm not kidding.
Yeah. But I remember we were at your house like a year ago, and I think you started playing it, but
I probably
we were all doing other stuff.
In terms of rewatchability, I think Son takes it, but we'll get into that when we start talking about Son. Are you ready for you want to start talking about Frankenstein? You ready for my synopsis?
Yep, here we go.
Okay. Over the river and through the woods, we meet Gene Wilder's grandpa, who begins the creation of what would eventually become a legit chocolate factory. Because after 3 films, the franchise turns into an actual pile of turds. Watch as a woman with early onset Stockholm Syndrome calls upon the help of her grouchy father-in-law, as well as Dr. Abraham Van Helsing and her possible baby daddy, to get her deadbeat fiancé to give up on his dream of becoming a famous scientist, and commit already. Oh, and it's probably the best horror film ever made.
I mean, that last part is a stretch, but yeah, the rest of it's pretty accurate.
I think it probably is the greatest horror film ever made. Everybody always talks about, like, oh, The Exorcist is the greatest horror film ever made. I'm like, Frankenstein is, first of all, it's definitely the most famous horror film ever made.
Yeah. I mean, so it's not my favorite Frankenstein movie. My favorite Frankenstein movie is obviously Bride.
Yeah. Which I assume, I never asked you that, but I assumed it just from the way you always talk about it.
I mean, yeah. Bride has a higher Rotten Tomato score.
I know that.
Yeah, as we...
Do you not have notes?
Yeah, I've got notes.
Oh, okay.
I've got notes, I just don't write, a book like you did.
It's half a page. But I have a lot to talk about. The first thing that I want to talk about, though, is Boris Karloff's appearance as the monster. And that gets into some nostalgia.
You mean question marks appearance?
Yeah, question marks appearance as the monster. It's ridiculous. But anyway.
I liked it.
Like, I said we'd talk about Ghost of Frankenstein later, and this is kind of what I meant, is like, when I was growing up, and this is, let's see, I would have been, this was before you were born, so I would have been like 6 or 7, I
Yes,
think.
David, this movie came out before I was born. Good job.
Yeah, good job. Anyway, this is when I was actually probably 7 or 8. Dad taped this movie and put it in the VCR and was like, we're going to watch Frankenstein. You got to watch this. And I'm like, okay. And before then, I obviously knew what Frankenstein was. I was much more used to the... yeah. The Lon Chaney version is what I was used to from, like, Ghost of Frankenstein. Big, like, lumbering, square-jawed, like, eyes are basically closed, like, arms out like this, like the Bela Lugosi version. Like, that's what I thought I was going to watch. And I'm going to get into some very specific details of my mindset. And it's I'm not making this up. This is a legit memory I have. I remember thinking all these things. When the movie starts... nothing's really happening. I know I'm watching Frankenstein. I'm expecting the big square-jawed, flat-headed monster to just come lumbering in at any moment. And then it gets to the scene where they reveal him, and he walks into the room backwards, which is hilarious. But he walks into the room backwards, and when he turned around, I remember I was literally shook as a kid because Karloff looked so different from what I expected that it shook me. I was not expecting this thin, cadaver-looking frame with this really triangular jaw. His eyes just half open to where he's kind of looking at you, because before, like I said, like the eyes were like closed all the time and everything you ever see. And then the dimple was what got me too, like when he took the piece of his teeth out and like sucked that in, and like Jack Pierce highlighted the dimple.
Yeah, it laid the groundwork for what Tim Burton considers to be like the perfect face.
Yeah. But his appearance was literally what made me fall in love with the Frankenstein monster, which is my favorite fictional character in media at all. Like, I love the Frankenstein monster, and I always refer to him as Frankenstein because I don't care about that, but it was the moment I first laid eyes on him, I just remember being like, whoa. Like, that is way different than I thought. Like, how come I never see this? And I was just, like, obsessed with his look. And then the other thing that kind of caught me off guard was Colin Clive's appearance as Dr. Frankenstein. Because we're so used to, like... I think what happened is Young Frankenstein got made, and the Gene Wilder, wild-haired, older look kind of became synonymous with Mad Doctors. Mm-hmm. And when I was a kid, in media, you'd see Mad Doctors, and it was always, like, the Gene Wilder look. So when Colin Clive appears as Frankenstein in the movie, I was like, who's this, like, strapping young man with insanity serial killer eyes, but, like, nice coiffed, like, combed black hair, and he's, like, 30 years old. I'm like, who is this? Is this the mad scientist? It was so opposite of what pop culture had, like, ingrained into my childlike head. But anyway... Yeah, that's what I have on their appearance and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, obviously... So one thing that I mean, so I kind of like it, but I also like dislike it in terms of like how modern movies are. Is that Frankenstein just jumps right into it?
Mm-hmm.
Like there is no, like they don't try to document like Henry's kind of descent into
Madness.
pretty much, which is
Well, that's what the book does.
right. And obviously, this was adapted by from a stage play, so they
Yeah.
had to, they had to kind of jump right into it because that's what plays
Wait, was
do.
it adapted from a stage play?
Yeah, it was.
I knew the stage play existed, but I didn't know it was adapted from the stage play.
It is, yeah, because Fritz is not in the book, but he's in the stage play.
Oh, he is. That's right. You're right. I forgot.
Which, by the way, I mean, one of the big takeaways from Frankenstein is that Fritz became the baseline for like Igor, obviously, and if there were Fritz walks that Igor could run.
And that's a continuity issue, but we'll get into the continuity issues with the next few films when we start talking about them.
Yeah.
But
is it because Dwight Frye plays a different character in Bride of Frankenstein?
No, but like when it comes to Frankenstein, like the differences with the book, and this is where me and Ryan Davidovich are gonna disagree hardcore because he thinks that movies need to follow the book exactly because he's some kind of lunatic. But anyway, the differences, it is vastly different from the novel, from Mary Shelley's novel, and the movie is better for it. It's like The Shining, right? Like they decided to take the concept of Frankenstein, and even though this was a famous book at the time, they still were just like, nope, we're gonna run our own direction with it, and it's so awesome that they did, because you can the reason I love it is because you can read the book and you can imagine like the book still. But Frankenstein the movie, like it creates its own world with the concept, and the characters are so different, and just like the monster is insanely different, like crazy different.
Yeah.
It was such a bold move to make the monster a mute, especially since talkies had just come out. Because like it's like when Young Frankenstein came out, and they were like, Mel Brooks was like, I want to make it in black and white, and they were like, no, color film's all the rage now. You gotta make it in color film, and he was like, no. It's such a bold move to be like, the villain of our movie is going to be totally mute, even though we have like the technology is now all the rage to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say, I mean, obviously one of the things that I love about these kind of movies is the runtime. So at an hour and 10 minutes, I mean, we need to get back to making shorter films because...
Perfect.
It's a great runtime. Like I said,
Perfect.
I probably, like with a more modern film, I would appreciate a little bit more of an introduction into it. But old movies, they move at or I'll say classic films. They move at a much different pace.
Take it easy. Do you want the glass of gin? Do you want to swirl it in front of the microphone?
Can you hear if it were scotch? Yes.
Can you hear my condescending tone by the way I'm swirling this?
No, I'll stick with my great value purified drinking water. Not a sponsor.
Don't plug Walmart in our shows.
I don't plug them. I just
so
like their
are
products.
You saying you would have rather had more setup in this movie rather than have it just jump into the...
So not in this one because, like I said, I like the runtime. I'm saying in a remake...
outside of runtime, are you saying you would if runtime wasn't an issue, you would rather...
No, not with... Because like I'm saying, so older films, they go at a different pace. And this one was adapted from the stage play, and that's how the stage play played out, was they get right into snatching up bodies. So...
Was the stage play like very German expressionist as well, or was that something for just the film? Because I don't know.
I don't know that much into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say it because the German expressionism in this film basically became a staple of horror movies afterwards for a long time.
Yeah. But yeah, I think what I'm saying is I think this movie kind of gets a pass for not having much of a exposition, but a remake, I would like to see a little bit more setup. The problem is...
Are you looking forward to Guillermo del Toro's? Because it looks like...
We'll see.
Because it looks like they're going to follow the book a little more closely, which means there's going to be more setup.
Yeah. We'll see. The thing I'm most scared of, and here's my problem with a lot of modern movies, is too much setup. Where they'll spend an hour of the film on just setup. I don't think you need to do that with Frankenstein. I think Frankenstein, you could get it 20 minutes. 20 minutes, I think, is plenty of time to get a good setup for it.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have entire films now that are just set up, like the Joker movie is just set up.
Which my opinion has lowered quite a bit on that movie, actually.
Well, because of the sequel?
No, not because I didn't see the sequel. I thought about it more and more over the years, and it's sort of becoming my new Last Jedi. Like, I really liked it when it came out, and then I look back and I'm like, look, we're not talking about the Joker right now.
I was about to say, you just confessed to, at one point, liking The Last Jedi. You might want to edit that out.
Crap. Can we edit that out? What is your favorite part of the first film, even though it's not your favorite in the trilogy? Like, what stands out to you as just like, this is...
The windmill.
The windmill?
Yeah, the windmill. I mean, I'm a sucker for a very atmospheric ending.
How? Not just atmospheric. It's still to this day the most epic ending to a horror film.
Yeah.
It literally is. Like, show me another one. Literally, show me.
If Steven were here, he would argue in favor of The Bride, and I think when we get to Bride, I'll probably argue in favor of The Bride as well.
Not more epic than the windmill, dude. It's just not.
It's not.
You have Frankenstein and the monster alone in the windmill. You know the monster can kill him. If he gets a hold of him, he's dead. He's dying. And that's basically what happens, because Frankenstein suddenly becomes the protagonist of the story, and you're just like, if he can't stop this thing, nobody can. And the windmill is burning all around them. They're trapped in the top. It's one of those things where it's like, you can be like, okay, the Conjuring films have really epic endings, but the Conjuring films are way less real world. So like, you can come up with your own rules and create a more epic ending. You know, you can be like, oh, now, you know, the drywall's tearing off the walls because of the demon's power, right? But you have to, like, it's not like a real world thing. So it's not quite, it doesn't have the same threat level mentally. Like, you can say, like, like if I say, Luke, the big polka dotted pink elephant is going to run you over, you're not that afraid because you're just like, that's kind of weird. But if I say that semi-truck is lost control and it's about to run you over, you're just like, oh, crap, you know? Like, that's a semi-truck. And that's the same thing with, like, the ending of Frankenstein versus the ending of other horror movies. And I'm not talking about The Bride. The Bride is very real world, too. But in versing, like, other horror movies like The Conjuring, it's just like, yeah, the drywall's like being pulled off the walls by the demon, but we're not really familiar with, like, demons in the real world, and so we're just like, yeah, I guess that's scary. But, like, in Frankenstein, it's just like, the windmill, the real windmill, is on fire. Fire hurts. He's trapped in there with a murderer. Murderers kill people.
Yeah, so Bride of Frankenstein, it's a very different ending, because it's not an imminent danger. It's a danger that's created by a character. But it's still, like, explosions, you know, like, self-destruct levels. It is, but the reason why Steven and I like it more is because...
Yeah.
Well, it's because... so throughout most of that film, Frankenstein's monster is the protagonist, and he's not... I wouldn't say it's necessarily heroic at the end. It's a little heroic. We can get to it.
We're going to talk about Bride.
Yeah, we can get to it.
Do you want to talk about how Karloff completely dies in this movie and is reborn as the Frankenstein monster? Like, his freaking performance is still the best to this day of any of his characters.
I had never seen him in anything before Frankenstein, so...
But no, that's what I'm saying. It was one of his first, and it's still his greatest.
Yeah.
Like, when I watch Frankenstein, I don't see Karloff. I don't, at all. I see Karloff in every other movie he's in, and that's not saying he's bad. I just watched The Body Snatcher. Fantastic film where he plays the villain. And his character in that movie is basically Satan. Like, that guy is just... He's super evil.
Yeah.
But you still see Karloff portraying a character. In Frankenstein, he's gone.
Yeah.
He is the monster.
Well, I mean, you know, he must have killed it in the auditioning process, because it was also pretty bold to... cast like a 5'10", 5'11" guy to play Frankenstein's monster.
That is true. That is very true. I always forget that he's not very tall.
No, it was a lot of old-timey camera effects, and then he was wearing apparently 13-inch boots that added like 4 inches to his height, is what they say.
13-inch boots, really?
Yeah, apparently they like went all the way up to the kneecap.
Holy crap, dude.
But then also he had like a back brace on. to like raise his posture.
My gosh.
Yeah, so there was a lot going on there to make him appear taller.
Yeah, I mean, I was captivated when I saw him portray the monster for the first time.
Yeah.
His performance to me, like, it makes you look beyond. So, like, every Frankenstein movie since this has done this, where they really hone in on, like, so you know how, like, in Pirates of the Caribbean, instead of focusing on, like, the swashbuckling fun, they zeroed in the sequels on, like, the supernatural crap.
Mm-hmm.
I find the question of, is it morally correct, is it morally okay to create life from the dead, I find it not as interesting as the questions that this first Frankenstein movie makes you ask, specifically because of Karloff's performance. Every Frankenstein movie since this has really honed in on the moral question of, is it okay to create life from the dead? But Karloff's performance, it makes you go beyond that and just ask, like, does he have a soul? What is he thinking right now? Like, in this particular scene, does he know what he is? How much does he remember from the memories of the criminal brain that he's now got? Is he inherently evil? Like, his performance alone, like, again, I don't think it was by design. I think it was literally Karloff's performance. And I don't even think he did it on purpose. I think he was just playing the part. But his performance makes you ask those questions beyond just, is it morally okay to do that? Instead, just, like, all these secondary questions that are thrust to the surface because he's playing the part so well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that's about as far as I can put it. So, I don't really have much else to add to Frankenstein.
Really? That's all you took on notes?
Pretty much. I mean, more focused on Bride. But also, I knew since we were doing 3 movies, I didn't want to over-clutter my notes.
That's true. Well, I can say that Universal started their run with Dracula, and then they cranked the dial up to 11 with Frankenstein right out the gate. Do you notice the absence of music in this film at all?
I mean, yeah, because that was one of the things that Bride brought in so well.
I think that's funny because I don't notice it. Like, I didn't notice it the first time I watched it. Like, I don't think it needs a soundtrack. The beginning soundtrack is awesome. Makes you feel, like, ominous. Like, not only, like, we're gonna watch something not only morally questionable, but we're gonna watch something dangerous. And then from there on out, anyway. Long story short,
you notice it when you watch it next to Bride.
I mean, yeah, that's probably true, but again, like, yeah, we'll get into that. But anyway, it's my favorite horror film of all time, for sure. It's influenced the holiday of Halloween, which is hilarious, like, a ton. Like, think about what Halloween would be as a holiday without Frankenstein. There would be no lab equipment setups, no mad scientists, no monsters stitched together.
Yeah.
Even zombies.
It has been a long time since I've seen a kid trick-or-treating dressed as Frankenstein, but
I'm not. But, like, the decorations, I mean,
yeah.
Like, without Frankenstein, Halloween would be quite different. Atmosphere, music, body horror. Like, it basically started body horror.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'll say about Frankenstein is that Dr. Frankenstein's dad is freaking hilarious. I want to be him when I'm an old man. He's super crotchety.
Yeah.
Anyway, you ready to talk about Bride of Frankenstein?
Am I?
Let's go with your synopsis then.
There you go. My dog ate it.
What?
I said my dog ate my synopsis.
No,
I've got one. Alright.
Your dog's downstairs. His name is Phantom.
No, I'm not taking him. Experience the original franchise to turn a singular book into multiple movies. A film so bold, the title character is introduced 3 minutes before the credits roll. Watch in horror as Boris Karloff's performance evolves from a brutish, naive giant to a brutish, naive giant with language skills of a toddler and an existential crisis. Experience The Bride of Frankenstein. On small screens only, because 90th anniversaries don't warrant theatrical re-releases, or so they say.
Which is bull crap, man. Bull crap. I hate that. Do you think that people are actually going to care enough to re-release it on the 100th anniversary? Because modern audiences are so stupid.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it does.
Men of culture like you and me won't be able to go see it.
That's right.
Well, Luke, I'm assuming this is your favorite out of the three.
So this is my favorite out of the three, and I mean, like I was saying last night, it is not my favorite Universal Monster movie, but it might be the best Universal Monster movie in terms of storytelling, in terms of overall the atmosphere of it all, the performances. You're pretty hard pressed to find one that is a better film. And I mean, one thing that always stands out is... So one thing that always stands out is, for one, Karloff obviously evolves his... I mean, obviously I was joking the synopsis, he obviously evolves the character, and they took the Frankenstein's monster from the villain of the first movie, or, you know, kind of the villain. Mm-hmm. It's hard to say. He is the villain. The movie doesn't really have a villain. He's a
sympathetic villain.
Yeah, and then he basically becomes like the audience all of a sudden has way more sympathy for him in Bride.
Yeah, that's what I had in my notes too, was the humanization of the monster. Especially back in the 30s. Because in the 30s, audiences were just like, yeah, the monster needs to die.
Right.
You know?
But the reason I like Bride of Frankenstein more is because it actually does have a clear-cut villain. And one thing that's nice, and it's normally this logic applies to superhero movies, but normally I say, like, if you're going to do an origin story, do an origin story, and then, you know, you still have to have a threat. You still have to have danger in the movie.
Yeah.
And that's what Frankenstein does. It has a threat. It doesn't really have a villain, but it has a threat, and it has, like, a climax. And then the second movie, once you get the origin done, the second movie is when you can have, you know, you can do a lot more with it. Obviously, this movie takes place right after the first one's done.
Yeah.
So they cut right into it.
You just like it because of Una O'Connor.
I don't even know who that is.
The squawking crow that starts from the beginning of the movie.
Yes. Yeah.
Who talks directly to the camera because she's such a good actress. No one will believe me. Yet they've all been murdered in the beds.
Hey, talkies had become they were a very new thing at the time. They just got people off the streets to do those lines.
She was like, what picks up the audio? Is it the camera?
But yeah, so...
I'm dead now.
That is what she says. She says, you watching this in 2025 on your smart TV. Just know I didn't make it. I died in a war.
Because they threw me there.
But yeah, so Pretorius is like the clear-cut villain in this movie, and he does not try to hide it at all.
Dude, Pretorius is... dude, no joke, Pretorius might be my favorite part of the whole movie. Yeah. Well, I think, legitimately, one of the most evil villains ever, and just relishes in it. Like, the whole freaking time. He's just like, I am evil, and the Bible is bad.
Yeah.
If you like your Bible stories.
See, for whoever's listening to this, just so you know, that this is before that had become cliche. So...
Yeah. But I love it. Dude, he's literally sitting in a cave. He's sitting in a tomb with a freaking skull in front of him and a candle lit, and he's drinking wine. He is the most evil son of a gun that has ever been in a movie.
Very reminiscent of Shakespeare.
Just laughing to himself, too. Just like laughing at the evil he's doing.
Yeah, but yeah, you feel...
Ernest Thesiger is his name, I believe, the actor that plays him, by the way.
Yeah. Well, you feel a lot more sympathy for the monster and Henry, and you despise Pretorius. So the movie does exactly what the movie wanted to do.
Yeah, and the manipulation of the monster by Pretorius is so freaking dastardly. The monster learns how to speak with the blind man, who is a good man. And, dude, I almost cry every single time I watch that scene. And Leah loves it, too, but... The blind man teaches him how to speak, and then Pretorius gets a hold of him, and he's just like, yes, there have been advancements since he's come to me.
Yeah,
Evil son of a gun.
Frankenstein's monster being able to speak is obviously one of the big differences between Bride and the original.
Which Karloff was against.
Yeah.
Did not want the monster to speak, but I'm so glad that James Whale put him in his place and said, knock it off.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely helps when it comes to gaining sympathy, and that's kind of like, that's actually a fairly modern technique in Hollywood, is taking a character that's despised and immediately making them a victim of something.
Yeah.
To kind of turn the audience. And I mean, in the monster's case, he's been a victim since he was created.
Yeah.
So.
And one thing about this film is the continuity errors is something I want to bring up with this trilogy as a whole. But like in Bride of Frankenstein, it starts off exactly where the first movie ends, and there's immediate continuity errors in terms of like how... So, for instance, the Burgermaster's a totally different guy now. Which is funny because the actor for the first Burgermaster in the first movie comes back in the third movie as the Burgermaster again, I think. But, so totally different character. Una O'Connor comes out of nowhere. Not in the first film at all. Not a staff of the house or anything. The dad is dead. Colin Clive's dad. And then the house itself looks different. It's a totally different looking house. What are your thoughts on continuity? Because I have a strange opinion about the continuity errors in these movies.
I don't really care.
You've never looked at that and been like, "What? Oh, the actress for his wife is also totally different."
Yeah, I mean,
Burnett too doesn't even look kind of the same.
Yeah, I mean, recastings used to happen a lot more often.
Yeah,
which is kind of funny about like filmmaking now. Now it's like, actually, not even now. Like, I think it was Kubrick always talked about how he's like, you know, once you start shooting for like a week, you're stuck with whatever actor, and
yeah,
if you have disagreements, you just have to try to work your way through them.
Dwight Fry playing a totally different character as well.
Yeah, you know, there were only so many actors back in those days.
Goodness gracious.
I mean, the Munsters completely recast Marilyn.
With a blonde. She looks just like her.
I mean, blondes, David, that's a recessive gene right there. Actually, I don't even know if it is. But, you know, sometimes it's hard to find people.
I think technically, yeah, it is. But so here's my opinion on the continuity errors. Is at first, when I was a kid, I hated it. But now as an adult, I love it. And the reason is because the Frankenstein movies, the reason I think they're a perfect trilogy isn't just because they're well-made movies. It's because each movie kind of like it's almost like you're not seeing the story that actually happened clearly. You're seeing it through a lens of something else. And like, it's almost like they're telling the same story through like different versions of a fairy tale. You know?
Yeah.
Like, each movie is so different, continuity-wise and look-wise, that it's just, even though the first two are the same director, the look of the movies is so different.
Yeah.
And the feel of them is different. The music, obviously, has that. But in terms of, like, really cool attention to detail continuity, did you know that Jack Pierce made Boris Karloff's hair grow as the monster as this movie goes on?
I think I mean, you probably have told me that before, but yeah, I'm pretty sure I heard of it.
Yeah, he makes the hair get longer as the film progresses. You have any idea how hard of work that is when you're shooting a movie? Because you don't shoot the scenes in order.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, so... Yeah, there's tons of passion behind the making of The Bride.
Yeah.
And obviously, The Bride is a character in the book, and they intentionally...
But she never comes to life in the book.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I do remember that now.
Frankenstein destroys it before he brings her to life.
Yeah, but so obviously they didn't even get that far in the first movie because of, you know, runtime and whatever else.
Yeah.
So I've always wondered if James Whale had plans for the sequel while they were making the original. And if so, then a lot of the decisions they made were good because, like I said with the whole superhero thing, you don't put the arch nemesis in the origin story.
Yeah.
And to me, like, the character of Pretorius and just the entire conflict of Bride of Frankenstein, like, if they would have tried to mash that all into the original, it wouldn't have worked.
I don't think that James Whale had plans for a sequel because they basically had to beg him to come back, I think. And when he came back, I think they had to create Pretorius because Colin Clive became a sympathetic character. And he was the antagonist, basically, in the first film. And then he becomes a sympathetic character, and they basically were like, okay, now we're going to make Dr. Frankenstein if he was just pure evil. And that's basically what Pretorius is. He's that dark side trying to call Colin Clive, Luke Skywalker to the dark. But, yeah. Anyway. What I like about this movie, too, is that Karloff was able to chew on this movie. Even though he didn't want the monster to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, he chews this movie up. And again, you don't hear Karloff. Karloff is always funny in the movies because he always talks the same way. And he'd be like, Toddy, don't talk to me, Toddy, like that. Yeah. And he speaks that way in every movie, but in this movie, he doesn't at all. And it's just, again, he totally disappears into the role. And when he's learning to speak with the blind man, it's got to be one of the most famous sequences ever.
Yeah. And that's another thing. When it comes to, iconic scenes, I do think Bride has more than the original. Because the original, like I said, it would be the windmill. It would be It's Alive, grave robbing. Bride has...
Yep, Bride has a grave robbing, too.
It does, yeah. But it's not as iconic as the original. In terms of, the scene.
Probably true.
But, with Bride, there's the blind man, there's the prison break, which, that's probably that's always been very nostalgic for me, because we had the action figure where he's on the chair.
I had the action figure. You didn't have Isht.
No. That's because my parents didn't love me as much.
I still have the action figure. It's down on the shelf. I just lost the chair. I don't know where it is.
But yeah, so Bride... there's also... we can get into the ending now, because... We kind of alluded to it earlier.
Let me just say, I agree with you that Bride has more iconic scenes.
It also had a higher budget, so when it comes to atmosphere, they were able to put a little bit more into it.
True. Dude, my favorite shot in the movie, before we get to the ending, my favorite shot in the movie is when the monster's in the tomb, and then he hears a noise from the grave robbers coming in with Pretorius to get the skeleton of the girl,
Mm-hmm.
And the camera, cuts to far away from the monster, and basically... the shadows are really harsh, and you just see the monster standing in the tomb. I'm like, that is a desktop background right there. Mm-hmm. That is such a cool shot. He's just standing there, and you can't see any details just because the shadows are so harsh.
Yeah. When it comes to the ending, so obviously then the bride is introduced. And
barely in the film.
That's right. And one thing you always talk about, I know, is the appreciation for Elsa Lanchester to... not just be a carbon copy, not just be a female version of the Frankenstein's monster.
Oh, I'm glad you said that. That wasn't even in my notes.
Yeah, she did her own thing.
Yeah, because she could have so easily, again, dude, it's the 30s. She could have so easily just been like, I am girl monster, but instead she's twitching like a cat. So different from Karloff. And by this time, Karloff's performance is synonymous with monster in the 30s. Mm-hmm. Everybody remembers the Frankenstein monster at this point because that was a huge hit. She could have so easily copied that.
Yeah.
But she didn't, and even her look magnifies that. She looks so different from Karloff's creature. She looks like a more refined creation too, which is really cool because it's kind of reminiscent of Adam and Eve in the Bible a little bit. Mm-hmm. Adam's made from the dust and the dirt, and Eve's made from a more elegant material, like a bone or a rib.
Oh, yeah, they murdered somebody to have a fresher.
Well, also, which they kind of hint at that when they get the skeleton of the girl. Anyway, and there's another thing I love about The Bride is there's so much biblical allegory in it, way more than the other films.
Yeah,
intensely so. There's even a scene where it's super on the nose, where the blind man, after the blind man scene, after he puts the monster to bed and he prays with him, the scene fades out, everything except for the cross hanging on the wall.
Yeah.
And then the cross fades out.
Yep. So basically, if she would have just phoned in that performance and just done, what Karloff did,
yeah,
I'm not sure the Bride character would be as iconic as it is today, because the character had no screen time, barely any screen time, and it still is considered one of the... She's still, on every Universal Monster box set action figure set.
She's a way more famous female Universal Monster than Dracula's daughter.
Yeah.
Which Dracula's daughter is totally a classic Universal Monster, but nobody ever talks about her.
Mm-hmm.
But Bride is, way more... But anyway, it's because of Jack Pierce's makeup and the costume design. It's because of Elsa Lanchester... That's her name, right?
Yep.
Elsa Lanchester's performance. And, James Whale's direction, because I promise you James Whale probably said, do something different.
Yeah.
Because the whole movie is different from the first one. And I love it. That's another thing. So, remember when I talked about Karloff's appearance shocking me as a child?
Mm-hmm.
When Dad recorded Bride of Frankenstein on VHS, I'm having trouble talking today. Anyway.
Stop drinking gin.
I know. I should probably stop. I thought this was water.
Don't get him
Why does it burn?
Don't get him drunk. He can barely talk as it is.
It's those PFASs, man. Your PFSs, whatever it is.
Yeah, we have contaminated water here.
The forever plastics. But anyway, when I was a kid and I watched Bride of Frankenstein on VHS, and it gets to the... First of all, I spent the entire movie, I'm just like, where's the bride at, man? Yeah. Literally the whole movie, I'm like, where is she? What the... She's still not... They still didn't create her. What the heck is going on? And then it finally reveals her, and again, I thought she was just going to be like... I thought she was going to be this, like, lumbering, like, woman, you know, like, basically a female version of whatever, because I had not seen pictures. I'd seen cartoons of her, and they make her look really boxy and weird in like, cartoons. But then they reveal her, and I'm like, oh, she's super feminine, actually. Like, she has a really nicely shaped face, and, like, really, like, plump, like, lipstick on, and just, like, she looks really feminine, and I think that's also by design, and also Elsa Lanchester's a, you know, she's a very fair woman to look at. A rather handsome woman, let's say.
Probably not right now.
Not right now, no. She's dead. Anyway. But anyway, you know what I mean? Like, it totally caught me off guard, again. Because I'm just like, I kept expecting these monsters to look like their cartoon counterparts that you'd see all over in, like, Halloween stores and stuff like that.
You thought Frankenstein was going to look like Frankenberry.
Exactly. No, like, legitimately. But anyway, and so again, Elsa Lanchester just, like, caught me off guard as a kid. I was like, whoa, okay, she looks like a woman.
Okay. One quick tangent. You know how there's, like, the Carmel character or whatever? The female serial character now?
Oh, yeah.
Whatever her name is, Creeper.
Are we going back to Frankenberry? Is that what you're talking about?
That's right. That is what I'm going back to.
Yeah, right.
Wouldn't it have been better if they would have just done Bride of Frankenberry?
If they were going to do a friggin' green cereal, why not just do the female version of the Creature from the Black Lagoon like they do all the time?
Yeah.
Like, they do that anyway. Which makes no sense, because the Gill Man is the Gill Man, not the Gill Woman, but still, like in Nightmare Before Christmas, like it's a female, and so just do that. Why did I have to be Carmella zombie chick? Anyway, yeah, I hate that. But the ending, though.
Okay, yeah.
My big flaw with the ending that I was going to bring up earlier.
There are none.
There is one. The reason the first movie's ending is better is because when the windmill catches fire, it's not because of a giant self-destruct lever that's sticking out of the wall for no reason at all.
That lever was there to cover up their tracks when they're like, okay, the people are going to be after us now for what we just did. We gotta blow this popsicle stand.
They definitely weren't going to unveil their creation to the world and be like, look, we can live forever. No, that I love the ending to Bride. Don't get me wrong. When the monster says, you live, you stay. We belong dead. One of my favorite movie endings of all time.
Yeah. So, obviously, so Steven and I just watched Son of Frankenstein. Has Steven been on the channel?
He's been on the channel, but not on the podcast.
Okay, yeah.
Podcast is different.
So, yeah. So, I don't really need to introduce him. Steven, he's a guy that we know, and...
Steven is the all-time cameraman.
That's right.
You hear his voice when he says things like, what was that?
But yeah, so me and him, we watched Son of Frankenstein because I knew we were doing this review, and like I said, it's been a long time since I'd watched it, so I wanted to watch it. When it ended, Steven was like, I still like Bride of Frankenstein the best, and he said it's because of the ending, and I said, I agree with you. The ending, like I said, I don't want to say the monster's heroic, but him being like, yes, you go.
It is a
and then that
heroic
sweet
sacrifice.
line about... Yeah.
He destroys evil by destroying Pretorius and himself because he realizes that his own existence is an abomination to creation.
Yeah. So, and I mean, that's why I like the ending. That's why a lot of people like the ending.
It's amazing. It's perfect.
Yeah. But that's also why...
It's just not as good as the first one.
Well, so Bride of Frankenstein to me is... It's much more of a good versus evil kind of movie.
Oh, without a doubt.
And...
The first movie's way more ambiguous.
Right, and that's the kind of stuff that I gravitate towards. That's why I love superhero movies and Star Wars and stuff like that. So that's why Bride is more appealing to me.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I mean, I like all the movies. So
Yeah.
I even like Son of Frankenstein, even though it is definitely the worst of the three.
Here's the thing. Even if there wasn't a third movie, Bride makes it feel like a complete story.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like Terminator 2, like closes out the story of Terminator. Bride of Frankenstein definitely closes out the story.
Yeah.
Like with a bow on it and everything. It's just like you could stop right there and it'd be perfect.
So,
but do you want to talk about some of the goofy moments?
I mean, we can, sure.
Like Pretorius's experiments.
Okay.
Every single time that scene happens to somebody who's never seen the movie, they're like, "What is this?"
So that scene totally. So for anyone who hasn't seen it, that scene is simply just like using, I guess, what would it be? Really primitive green screen or really primitive rotoscoping?
Yeah, but it looks great though.
Yeah. So basically, he makes
really good.
very small people. He makes like people that are like 6 inches tall. That scene only exists. You can't convince me otherwise. That scene only exists because that had become new technology, and they were like, "Well, we got to use it for something."
Well, so the James Whale is basically like the Steven Spielberg of that time. Like when new technology existed for movies, he was just like, "We got to do it." That's what he did with the Invisible Man.
Yeah.
You know, he was always about the special effects, man.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a ridiculous scene. I'm sure that people in 1935 watched it and they were like, "What?"
But see, okay, lift that scene out of the movie and put it in the first movie. Would it belong?
No, maybe a little bit
No.
better.
No, not at all. That's my point. This movie feels like it's like somebody is continuing the story of Frankenstein with a different fairy tale lens.
Yeah.
And that's why I like that scene. Even though when I was a kid, I was like, "Oh, screw this scene. This thing sucks." But it totally.
I still don't really like it.
I mean, I don't love it, but I like it a lot more. I appreciate it more. I understand what they were doing because, again, they're trying to hammer home Pretorius as a super evil guy.
Yeah. And I think it was a mission accomplished. Are we going to Sun now?
Oh yeah. In the dark hills of unspecified country, there exists a village where Dwight Fry is reincarnated as a new man every time he is killed. Terror strikes when Basil Rathbone arrives with his annoying son, whose terrible acting awakens a murderous monster created by his grandpa, and causes it to go on a killing spree to avenge his broken-necked, drooling boyfriend, played exquisitely by Bela Lugosi, who took the role because he needed to buy groceries that week.
And drugs.
I don't think that was till later. The gang joins forces with a soldier from the Third Reich, and hijinks ensue as they try to decide whether or not to let the monster kill the child, who should have been played by Gene Wilder because the subtle continuity would have been awesome. But he was busy making all the kids in his neighborhood nervous around him at the time and couldn't be bothered.
Yeah, makes sense.
So, Luke, you've never seen Sun before.
No, I'd seen it.
Never in your life. This was your first time.
I don't know why you keep thinking I'd never seen it.
Maybe you should start watching good movies more often. Then you would have seen it before yesterday.
Yeah. So there was obviously the kind of devolving of the creature where... And I don't...
We're just jumping right into the details?
Yeah.
How do you feel about the movie as a whole, first of all?
It's the worst of the three. But it's still enjoyable.
Go ahead.
Which one are you going to say it's better than?
I wasn't going to say it's better than any. I would say... Here's my genuine opinion on these first three movies is they should have stopped after this one and just stopped making Frankenstein movies. Because what this one to me is this is like... What this is to me is Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises. Like, you're going to have people say each one is their favorite, right? But one is not necessarily objectively better than the other one. I think all three of them are basically comparable.
Well, that's ludicrous. The Dark Knight is the best one.
You're out of your mind. Batman Begins is the best one. But
which also turned 20 this year.
I saw that. But
no re-release either.
This movie is the Dark Knight Rises of this trilogy. So, like, you know how the Dark Knight ends
the worst one?
very exciting. No.
Thank you for proving my point.
No, but like, I'm trying to explain the tone. So like, they didn't need to make this movie. Bride of Frankenstein ended the story.
Mm-hmm.
But The Dark Knight kind of ended the story as well. And then The Dark Knight Rises starts, and it's like super somber and melancholy and dark, and everybody hates everybody, and just like, and that's kind of how this movie is. Like, it's like, oh, we're back in the Frankenstein universe. Well, what's it like? Is it going to be exciting like the first two movies? Is there going to be a burning windmill? Is it going to be this and that, explosions, and the monsters running around again? And it's just like, no. They're just like, Dr. Frankenstein's dead. His wife's dead. Everybody's dead.
And instead of a windmill, there's this weird acid pit.
Yeah, his son shows up. Everything's just like slow. The village hates their family. This is like a realistic like afterbirth of what happened in the first two movies, and I love it because of it. It's so dark and depressing, and just like you're just like, oh man, what? where are we? What is happening?
Yeah. Well, so one thing. Spoiler alert. They should have stopped killing the monster at the end of every movie because it became unrealistic how they bring him back every time.
That's what I'm saying. After this one, it should have been over.
Yeah.
Because he's not surviving a sulfur pit. I don't care what Frankenstein or Ghost of Frankenstein said.
Yeah. But yeah, they constantly were killing him off at the end of the movie, and it became like this cliche where they kill him off and then they find a way to bring him back.
It's realistic survival, though. I mean,
some of it is.
Yeah, for the most part.
How did they find him at Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman? Isn't he just like...
He's frozen in ice.
Yeah. He got Captain America.
See, I don't get that reference because I don't really like superheroes.
You know that reference.
I really don't.
Captain America, how he got to the modern day.
He gets frozen in ice?
Yes! Surely you knew
He gets
that.
frozen in ice.
Yes, in like 1945, he's frozen in ice.
How does he survive being frozen in ice?
Because the comic book is from like the 1960s.
That's fair.
And it was only 20 years back then.
Look, I probably knew that reference back in the day. I probably would have, but just not anymore.
Yeah, but now you've taken all the good stuff out of your brain and replaced it with stupid stuff.
Look at my office, dude. That's where all my good stuff is. It's awesome. My office is cooler than anybody else's office on planet Earth. But anyway.
It's got dog food in
it. But what were we talking about?
We were talking about
you said we need to stop killing the monster at the end of every movie. That's right.
It just became this cliche way to end a Frankenstein movie.
But that's why I like the way this movie starts.
They couldn't have just had him walk off into the woods at some point.
Just carries the pieces of the bride with him. He's like, I will fix you.
Or they could have him float away on a raft. Just saying.
Nice reference. That was great. Oh, dude, we need to talk about Van Helsing again. It's been too long. Anyway.
It's the book, too, isn't it?
What's that?
It's the book, too, isn't it? Isn't that how the book ends?
No, I don't think so. Oh, maybe he does float. No, he does. He floats away on a piece of ice or something. Anyway. Oh, wow! Did Van Helsing do that on purpose?
I think they did, yeah.
Easter egg to the book?
That's what I heard.
That's way smarter of a move than that movie should have freaking... Anyway, long story short, what I like so much about this movie is the monster basically starts off dead from the last movie.
Mm.
You know, they have to bring him back to life. I mean, obviously he's not because he was doing stuff before that, Igor says, but in terms of the audience experiencing it, the monster's basically dead.
Mm-hmm.
And so we get the creation sequence again, kind of. But it's a little different because it's more of a monster revival than it is. You know, I didn't get to see Son of Frankenstein as a kid. I wanted to so bad, but Dad didn't tape that one.
Yeah, it's a good look for the monster.
I didn't see it until I was an adult.
Yeah, because I always saw it before I'd watched the movie. I'd always seen the appearance of the monster, where he's wearing like that fur.
Yeah.
It's definitely. I mean, it's a good design.
It's a good
monster.
change up.
Yeah.
And the monster's a mute again. Which I, again, don't mind. It's back to being dark.
I think they explain it okay. When we were watching it, Steven was like... Oh, what was it? What, is it retconning?
Steven is Luke's boyfriend, by the way.
That's right. Yep. He's actually her cousin, so that'd be illegal in most states. Isn't it retconning? Isn't that the term when you're just like, oh, that didn't happen or something.
Yeah, retconning.
Yeah, so...
But again,
Steven
the whole trilogy retcons the movie before it, basically, with so many things.
Well, but Steven was like, oh, good retcon there, now he can't talk. And I was like, well, I mean, they kind of explain it by saying he has brain damage.
Yeah.
And stuff like that, so... I don't actually mind it.
He gets struck by lightning or whatever, which is so stupid.
Well, he starts the movie off in a coma, right?
Yeah, because he gets struck by lightning, which is great in this movie, but what's so stupid about Ghost of Frankenstein is... The movie Ghost of Frankenstein literally starts with the monster going out into the lightning storm and the lightning striking him, and Igor's like, oh, I see it, the lightning, it makes you stronger. It's just like, now that is a blatant retcon. The last movie, lightning knocked him the F out.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously what this movie contributes the most to Universal Monster lore is the character Igor.
Oh, dude. I have Igor in my notes. Let's get into that.
Yeah.
That might be Bela Lugosi's best performance. Probably ever.
It's definitely good. I mean...
Is it better than Dracula? Because he's actually acting with Igor. With Dracula, he is Dracula, but that's kind of why I say Igor is a better performance, because he didn't have to try as hard as Dracula, because he is Dracula.
Yeah. I mean, that's a tough one. When it comes to his performance in Son, like, he was already a pretty established actor at the point. He could have easily phoned that one in, and he still turns in...
Well, he could have phoned it in because they were paying him way less than everybody else, too. Yeah. Like, he had no reason to try as hard as he did, but he freaking... Dude, he clocked into work.
Yeah, and that is the thing. So, Karloff is a great actor for the monster.
Yeah.
But I think Lugosi is a better actor in general, because he's played characters in so many Universal Monster movies where he's got a lot more range, I feel like.
It's an
He's the gypsy and the wolfman.
I disagree.
He's Igor.
He doesn't have as much range. I don't know if I'd call him a better actor than Karloff. I would... Well, it is an interesting thought. I've never thought about who is actually the better actor.
Between the gypsy and the wolfman,
I would say
Igor,
Lugosi had the opportunity...
Dracula.
I would say Lugosi had more opportunities to play diverse characters because Karloff was getting typecast, which he said was the best thing that ever happened to him.
Yeah.
Karloff was always typecast as the monster or the villain, whereas Lugosi, because of the tragic turns his life took, they kept offering him small bit parts, but in the end, it almost wound up being more of a blessing for his legacy, because he does get the opportunity to play a very diverse group of characters.
He's in, like, almost...
You know how much Universal didn't care about Bela Lugosi by the time the Wolfman came around? They name his character Bela.
Yeah, they do. But obviously, like, when it comes to monster franchises, I don't think he's in The Mummy, right? Not in any Mummy movies?
No, he's not.
And then he's not in The Creature, because it obviously happened way later.
Mm-hmm.
But he's in the big three. He's in Frankenstein, Dracula, and the Wolfman.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And
that definitely helps his legacy.
And he plays Frankenstein at some point. He actually plays the monster. Yeah. And he plays Dracula, obviously. And then he plays a Wolfman in The Wolfman.
Yeah, I guess that is true, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So... Hold on. Oh my goodness. Everybody always says Lon Chaney Jr. is the only actor to portray the big three. It was Bela did it first.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean...
Take that, Lon Chaney Jr.
He never had the makeup on for the
He doesn't
Wolfman,
look so good anymore either.
Yeah.
He's dead.
Yeah, like his father before him. But yeah, so Igor...
Hey, Luke. Too soon.
Right. Igor is the biggest contribution this movie makes to the lore, and
yes.
Honestly, I had totally forgotten, because like I said, it'd been so long. I totally forgot he's basically the villain to this movie.
He is, and he's just as bad as Pretorius. Again, Pretorius is Dark Knight's the Joker, right?
Yeah.
He just wants to watch the world burn. Frickin' Igor is Bane in this movie. Like, he just is out for vengeance, wants to kill the whole village, basically, that sentenced him to hang, and he will literally blatantly murder anybody that stands in his way.
Yeah.
You know? Literally he uses Dr. Frankenstein and then, connivingly gets him to trust him. And also the comparison is also like, so like you have the Joker who's always like pretty well dressed in his little purple suit and stuff, and then Bane is very like rugged with his like freaking furry coat and stuff, and it's the same kind of contrast here. You got Pretorius who's very well dressed and his like evil grin, and then you have Igor who's just like
and Bane suffers from a nearly fatal
debilitating
injury.
Yes.
And so does Igor.
Yeah,
we're drawing a lot of comparisons to the Dark Knight trilogy.
Well, I did that on purpose. Like that's something I took note of several years ago when I was watching Son of Frankenstein. I was like, this movie feels like The Dark Knight Rises. It feels like that tone. Like, can't you just see a trailer for Son of Frankenstein playing, and then you have those really faint Dark Knight Rises piano notes, that ding, 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 like when the train's rolling into town, you know?
Yeah. Well, I remember
in a world where continuity doesn't give an F.
Well, I mean, I actually remember the real Dark Knight trilogy, or the real Dark Knight Rises trailer, and I remember it began with, "Oh, say can you see?" And then Igor's like, "That's a lovely, lovely voice."
That's a lovely, lovely voice. Anyway, since I mentioned continuity, I'll bring this up. This movie breaks the continuity the most out of all of them. They all do. But this movie, like, the house looks totally different. Mm-hmm. There's characters in the movie we have never seen before. Dwight Frye comes back again as another character, which I hinted at in my synopsis. And then the Burgermaster is the Burgermaster again, I think. Or no, he isn't. But he plays a different character in the village from the first movie. And Igor says he was once an assistant to Basil Rathbone's dad and, like, Colin Clive, and never freaking, you never see him ever, unless he's Fritz and he somehow survived the hanging. And then, what else is there? Luke, what else? The wooden arm guy.
No, yep.
When he says the monster took him by the arm, which that story is Quint's Indianapolis tale from Jaws, basically. Like, of this movie, I mean.
Yeah.
Like, every time he starts telling it... I remember... So, Leah will sit here and watch these movies. She's not a huge fan of...
She falls asleep most of the time.
She does fall asleep most of the time. But anyway... And again, Leah is my cat. But anyway... every time we watch Son of Frankenstein together, which is way more than she cares to tell, when it gets to that scene, every single time, she's like, oh, man... When he talks about his arm getting ripped up by the root, she's like, oh.
So that was one thing. Rewatching it for the first time in years, I was like, Young Frankenstein is much more a parody of Son of Frankenstein than any of the other two.
Yeah, and do you know why? Because technically, continuity-wise, the little kid in this movie is Gene Wilder's character, and I love how they at least have similar hair. Gene Wilder, by the way, at the time this movie was made, was almost the same age as this kid. If he would have played that role, it would have been full circle, man.
Yeah.
And that's why I love Young Frankenstein, too, because you can literally watch it as a direct sequel to these movies.
Yeah, he might not have agreed to do Young Frankenstein then, though, because you know how it is with child actors.
I mean, maybe
unless they really want a paycheck.
Gene Wilder, I feel like he would have said yes. He said yes to a lot of projects. As long as he had some element of creative control, he really cared about.
Well, he was always a comedic
Gene Wilder
character.
was a sweet, sweet man.
Yeah, well, he was always a comedic actor. Yeah. And if he would have come in as doing serious films as a child, he might not have gone comedy, and he might not have been like, oh, you're going to do a parody of a movie that I already did, and, you know.
No, I think he would have liked it. I think he would have thought it was funny because him and Mel Brooks were friends.
Yeah. Speaking of Mel Brooks, Spaceballs. Is that movie going to come out before he's dead?
He's like 97 or something, right?
He's going to be 101 by the time that movie's supposed to release.
No, he's not.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Did you watch the trailer last night? Because it's hilarious.
No, I haven't watched like any trailers lately.
We'll watch it after we're done wrapping this up.
I do want to say one flaw I do have with this movie is that I do feel like, and this is going to sound sacrilegious because I'm talking against what I just praised so much, But Karloff's performance in this movie is really good, except for a couple of times where he kind of hams it up a little bit. And the mirror scene, when he sees himself in the mirror and pulls Frankenstein in front of the mirror, it's a little hammy, it's a little on the nose. Yeah. I feel like they gave him a little too much creative control in that aspect. And then the best scene in the movie is it's gotta be when Bill Lugosi and Karloff are like in that window. Or no, Lugosi's in the window. And then he, like, turns to get the monster, and the monster's goofy head just comes up in the window, and he points to the guy he once killed, and the monster's just like... it goes down.
This is a little unrelated, but going back to Bride a little bit...
Yeah.
One thing that was so well done with, like, monster portrayals and whatnot, and also, I mean, this is something that James Whale seemed to excel at, but when the bride is introduced... the first person she sees and the first person she goes to is Dr. Frankenstein. And like you said earlier, you know, he's kind of an attractive dude.
Yeah.
You know, like nice looking, well dressed, whatever. And I saw someone in a YouTube comment section today, because I was watching clips to, prepare. Someone pointed out, they said, so the first thing she sees is Dr. Frankenstein, and it instantly like tells her like what is normal, what is attractive, stuff like that. And then she sees the monster, and it's instantly her new definition, or it's her first definition for, what is a monster, what is ugly, what is not.
Right.
And then she goes back to Henry in that scene.
Yeah.
So yeah, when it comes to Bride of Frankenstein versus like Son of Frankenstein, in terms of like how the monsters act, I mean, Karloff was kind of, he might have just been, at that point, that's his third movie. He's just kind of felt like he had a feel for it.
Well,
but also it might have been different direction. So
it could have been different direction, but also like at that point he was so famous, it kind of had like probably, I would assume it had like a Johnny Depp Jack Sparrow effect, where like with the last Pirates movie, like they were just like,
he's like, I'm gonna go home and beat Amber Heard.
No, he's gonna go home and get beat by Amber Heard.
The truth is somewhere in between.
Most likely. But anyway, like, you know what I mean? Like, the actor basically becomes the controlling force in the character.
Yeah. And
so that's probably why the monster was a mute in this movie, because Karloff was against the monster speaking in general. And so they probably let him do whatever he wanted to do. But thank God Karloff had the good sense to be like, this is it for me. This is my final time being the monster. Whereas Johnny Depp's just like, I'm going to keep being Jack Sparrow, and I'm going to be goofy, floopy, flubbity, floobity, like in every new movie. But how is it in terms of like a send-off to Karloff's monster, in your opinion?
Like I said, it would have been better if he wouldn't have died at the end. If he would have just wandered off into the woods.
You know what? If he would have just walked in, like Igor dies and the monster walks into the woods, that would have been a very touching ending.
Yeah.
But it is the film that we got, and in the end, the monster kind of has to be destroyed, which is why I said like Bride of Frankenstein. Anyway, I find it fitting that like the movie is basically, as I described, basically like a funeral dirge for Karloff's last portrayal as the monster.
Yeah.
Like, that somber tone fits so well, since it's his last time filling the boots that made him a star.
Yeah, it's a good send-off in terms of, like, the essence of the character was still there. One of his very last scenes is when he's looking down at the pit with the sun, and he picks up the kid, and then puts him back on the ladder.
Oh, yeah.
So...
Dude, do you think... I never thought about this. Do you think that's a callback? Like, do you think he remembered throwing the girl in the pond?
Possibly, yeah.
Dude. That's crazy. I wonder if Karloff did that on purpose. I really do wonder. I haven't even looked at my notes, like, hardly at all in this freaking thing. But yeah, the scenery in this movie and the mansion are totally redesigned. And, like, again, I love it because it's like, okay, we're getting another glimpse into this world being told by, like, a different kid's grandma. You know what I mean? Like, a different fairy tale altogether. Like how all the Scary Stories books, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, how all three of those books have different, like, vibes.
Yeah.
Like, it's the same with these three movies. They all have super different vibes, super different worlds.
Yeah.
And the film, it's a super unique way that the film reminds the audience of the things that happened before. Because, like I said when we started, like, you couldn't just... If you missed the movie in the theater, you missed the movie.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. Which, I mean, that's probably why, like, Bride actually has, like, straight-up flashback sequences at the beginning.
Yeah, it does.
As the, like,
and some of them are even
summary.
totally reshot. Like, some of them aren't even... Which is funny, because in one of those sequences, you can actually see, like, it's Karloff's, like, new costume sleeve from Bride. So it's just like they just took a sequence of him choking somebody and put it in there as a flashback, even though the sleeve's all burnt up and stuff. But yeah, anyway, as far as Son of Frankenstein goes, every time the movie ends, I feel sad that the journey is over, but I also feel very satisfied.
Yeah.
Again, similar to like when The Dark Knight Rises ends, I feel sad because it's just like, man, that was a great trilogy, but I'm very satisfied with it.
Yeah.
But it's, like I said before, it's probably the one of the three that I watched the most. Even though the first one is my favorite, I always find myself putting the DVD to Son of Frankenstein in.
Yeah.
Just always put it in. I always watch it all the time.
Yeah. I mean, the first movie is way more accessible for me. I have it in 4K on my Prime Video account. It's free on YouTube pretty often. Gosh. And I have it on DVD.
This is the age
and
difference
Blu-ray.
between us. I just said I I put in the Son of Frankenstein DVD. I have it on 4K on my Amazon Video account.
No, so I can access it on my phone on Amazon. I can watch it on YouTube like multiple months out of the year. But then also I have it on Blu-ray.
Do you know what I am? I'm Fraser's dad when Fraser restores that record. And and his dad puts in his old record, just like, no, you ruined it. And he puts the first one on, it's like all staticky and like dusty, and he's like, that's how it is.
Yeah. But no.
That's how it's supposed to sound.
All I'm saying is I watch Frankenstein the most just because I have way more access to it. Because even though Bride of Frankenstein is also an iconic film, and a lot of people do say that it's their favorite, for some reason, YouTube's free movie thing, they don't put Bride on as much as they do
you
Frankenstein.
You hear that, YouTube?
Yeah, YouTube.
You stupid jerks.
We're mad at you.
Yeah.
Just
Take
for that,
this video down.
Just for that, we're uploading this somewhere else.
You a-holes.
We're gonna host this podcast on the Pirate Bay.
We're going to Rumble and Twitchter. In terms of comparing it to the other Universal monster movies, because there's plenty of them, other classic Universal monster movies, this trilogy as a whole, we've talked about it very seriously, like, this entire time. There's not really an aspect of it I can think of where it's just like, man, that's really stupid or goofy. You know, there's, like, for instance, you could talk about the Creature from the Black Lagoon trilogy, and, like, basically the entire third movie, you're just like, well, that was stupid.
Yeah.
But, like, in terms of, like...
Revenge of the Creature also goes on way too long.
Does it? I haven't watched it in a very... That's the one I haven't watched in a really long time.
So I watched it last year, and it was my first time watching it in a long time.
That's Dad's favorite.
I know it is, but I was watching it, and I was like, checking my watch periodically. Really? It goes pretty long. So.
Yeah, and then the Wolfman, like, you have the Wolfman, and then you have Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, and it just immediately, like, goes into B-movie territory after that. Like, immediately.
Yeah. And
into Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. So, like, the Frankenstein trilogy as a whole, the first three before they ruin it with Ghost of Frankenstein, it holds up, in my opinion, much more than most. Like, it's very serious. Like, all the way through the first three movies, it is very serious. Each movie are just, like, first-rate chillers. What's your opinion on these first three movies? You've seen Ghost of Frankenstein, right?
I've not.
Okay.
No.
All right. You probably should have watched that, too.
Yeah, I mean, it's... All three of them are good. All three of them I have quite a bit of nostalgia with. I grew up with a lot of them. And, like I said, Son of Frankenstein I watched the least. But I don't mind any of them. And I think that, it's kind of criminal that there wasn't a re-release for Bride of Frankenstein. Because we're starting to get to the point in anniversaries where, like... Not only talkies are having, like, 100-year anniversaries, or it's coming up, but also, like, actually, like, iconic films are having huge anniversaries. So, like, Nosferatu turning 100, like, it's cool, but it didn't get a theatrical re-release because, for one, it's a silent film, and then two, it's a very aged film.
Thanks, Gen Z.
Yeah, well...
And Gen Alpha, and Gen Beta and Gen W, XYZ.
I thought that Nosferatu could have gotten a re-release just because the remake came out, like, right after, you know?
They should have done it the year before, at least.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand why you wouldn't do it when the new movie came out, because you don't want the new movie to... You don't want people getting confused when they go to the freaking movie theater.
Right. But by 1935, when Bride came out, and you could say the same thing about the Son of, you could say the same thing about Frankenstein. It's crazy how in 10 years, how much filmmaking had progressed, to the point where, like, when these films turn 100, 10 years from now,
yeah,
it's still going to hold up. Yeah. Whereas Nosferatu does not really, like, it's fallen apart quite a bit.
Yeah.
These movies are still going to hold up.
Modern audiences are so stupid. So stupid. I was watching a Red Letter Media video where I think one of the guys was complaining about he went to the theater to see the Jurassic Park re-release, and he said there were these two girls on their phones in front of him the entire time, and when the movie ended, they were just like, man, that was really boring. And he was like, they said that about Jurassic Park. That's literally how... Those are the people we are dealing with right now.
Hey, Steven has done that to us.
Watch something in black and white, you stupid fools.
Yeah. I mean, Jurassic Park's not even in black and white, so that's just kind of...
It's a sign of high culture when you watch things in black and white, Luke.
Yeah. What were you even doing going to see Jurassic Park in the theater if you hadn't seen it previously?
Probably because it's Jurassic Park! That's the one with Chris Pratt, right?
Probably. You know what was funny?
I really liked him in The Office!
Yeah. You know what was funny was I went and saw Batman 1989 in theaters, and there was a shocking amount of people...
Is that what we're calling it now? Batman 1989?
I mean,
that makes me depressed.
If I say Batman, people are going to be like, is it Christian Bale?
Exactly. It's stupid.
Anyways, I went and saw the original Batman a little bit ago, and I'll say I was a little bit encouraged because not only was there a lot of people in the theaters, but there was a fair amount of young people in that theater also.
Yeah.
Same thing with Revenge of the Sith. Revenge of the Sith 20th anniversary. Now, I went at a matinee because I'm lame. But there was, like, a bunch of, like, parents with, like, their little kids, and, like, you could tell the parents were, like, excited to get them to see it, so...
I mean, that's how I'm gonna be.
Maybe Gen Alpha will get back on the right track, because maybe their parents will force them to watch things.
All I know is, Jack doesn't stand a chance. He's gonna be cultured.
Jack is his dog.
I'm brainwashing him.
Leah is his cat, Jack is his dog.
I have a very satisfying existence.
Yeah. Alright. I think we're there. I think,
Are we there?
I mean, so for me, Frankenstein is an A. Bride is an A+. Son of, I think it's a B+. I don't like it as much, so.
We do 4 out of 5s here. Remember?
Alright. 4...
Or no, we do...
I did a percentage.
Did I say 4 out of 5s?
Yeah, I used to do percentage.
What does that even mean? No. We're not doing percentages. Remember, we do out of 10.
Alright, out of 10?
Yeah.
Well, then it's... Can I go halves?
We already talked about this in the last freaking thing!
Like 2 years ago?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's been like at least 2 years.
See what I mean? Gen Z, they can't remember freaking 2 years ago.
Right.
Out of 10. You don't need any halvesies if there's 10 of them.
Alright, well then it's 9, 10, 8. There it is.
9, 10, 8? Okay, I'm gonna go 9.5.
Oh.